I'm brave, and this is my story. I've been happily married to John for 21 years. I have a very supportive mum, 4 caring sisters, 2 good-natured beagles, and an arsehole of a cat named Harry. Harold, when he's naughty, he has anger issues. I'm here today to tell my story in the hope of lifting the stigma that surrounds mental illness and the prejudgment that all too often arises. I wish in the past I could have been brave enough to talk about my illness, but I was too worried about how I would be perceived, and I didn't want to be treated differently. Instead, I learned to hide my emotions, and I am very good at whipping out a happy face while choking back the tears. I remember clearly when I was 8 years old, my father would wrap his empty whiskey bottles in newspaper, drive me to the local shop so I could put them in the bin. His evidence of drinking was taken care of, and the process continued. My father passed away when I was 10. He had cirrhosis of the liver due to alcoholism. Some years later, I remembered that I had disposed of his empty bottles. I became convinced that not only had I been his enabler, but I blamed myself for his death. I was riddled with guilt and I wanted punishment. So I started to self-harm by cutting myself, and it felt good. It wasn't until I was in my early 30s when my 2 nieces were both 8. That was the same age I had been while hiding his bottles. I realised then that I couldn't possibly be held responsible. I then was able to leave my guilt behind, but I was angry and I hated him. A few years later, I made peace with my dad. I forgave him. I let go. It was healing. I was a better person for it. The onset of my mental illness was in 1982 when I was 15. For 8 years, I was incorrectly diagnosed as having schizophrenia. I was placed on large doses of medications that didn't work. They made me tired, groggy, and I slept a lot. My life was a disaster. I had no friends, and other than my mum, I was alone. At 23 years old, I fell into the care of my current psychiatrist, who diagnosed me with bipolar disorder, and she changed my medications, adding a mood stabiliser and changing up others. It made a huge difference. My life slowly improved. After I was on the right medication, I felt the fog in my brain lift. It was a wonderful experience. I saw aspects of my life differently. I sensed hope, and I knew I would be okay. I still had many hospital admissions up until age 29, but I knew at last I was in good caring hands. From the ages 15 to 28, I spent more time in psych hospitals than out. I am both happy and proud to tell you today that I have just had 21 years without a hospital admission. Just a very brief one. Thank you. Thank you. I attribute this to my husband, John, it's not here, my mum, and my wonderful psychiatrist, who I've had batting for me for the last 30 years. She's given me her mobile number for emergencies, which have been a lifesaver in dark times. She's always bolt-billed, and for this I'm eternally grateful. Due to being in hospital, I miss milestone occasions such as my Year 10 farewell, my 18th and 21st birthday in hospital, as well as a couple of Christmases. In 1985, I was placed onto the invalid pension. This title did nothing to help the stigma of the mentally ill or my self-esteem. I've been told to get over it, have a warm bath, you have nothing to be depressed about, you shouldn't be taking tablets, or you are menopausal. The stigma is real. It is hurtful, harmful, and definitely not helpful. It's the pink elephant in the room. Any wonder we choose to wear a mask? John and I moved to the Central Coast in 2015, and it was a fresh start after two very serious car accidents. We love our life here. We have found a lot of support here. It has really helped us to get our lives back on track. John also has mental illness, so we understand how our symptoms can impact each other. If we are both not feeling great, we give each other space. We've recently bought a pair of Bluetooth headphones each, which we both take refuge in. I'm quite rude, actually. In our early days, we discussed children, but unfortunately, the very high chance of our children inheriting mental illness. So for this reason, we opted out. Last year, I started to do art therapy, and it is up there with one of the best things I have done to keep me well. I'm always relaxed and happy after a class. Lastly, I'd like to touch on ECT, it's electroconvulsive therapy, a measured dose of electrical current into the brain. It has always lifted me out of very dark times. It doesn't work for everyone, however, I've been lucky to respond to it. I recovered each time after a course of treatments. There's nothing like one flew over the cuckoo's nest. These days I take life one day at a time. I see my psychiatrist regularly, I take my medication, and they keep me well. Life is good, I'm content and I'm happy. I won't give up on myself, I won't give up on John, and our arsehole cat Harry's here to stay too. Thank you.